Chapter 1: The Arrival. Eli Crane squinted against the alien sun as it spilled molten gold across the jagged horizon. The air was dense, pressing against his lungs like a heavy hand, and every breath felt like dragging in liquid metal. His boots sank into the crimson soil, a fine, powdery grit that clung to his gear and made every step an ordeal. Behind him, the jagged wreckage of the dropship still smoked, its once sleek form now a mangled heap. A crackle burst from his comms, sharp and sudden. "Eli, do you see this?" Carrie Lynn's voice, sharp and insistent, overrode the static. "That thing in the distance. Tell me it's a mirage." Eli turned, scanning the horizon. Towering above the plains was a silhouette too massive to be real. A creature, or perhaps a machine, its form obscured by waves of shimmering heat. Long, spindly legs moved with deliberate grace, each step shaking the ground beneath them. "Not a mirage," he muttered, adjusting his visor. The AI companion embedded in his wristband chimed in, its voice calm and detached. "Preliminary scans suggest a life form approximately 1.3 kilometers tall. Structural integrity appears biomechanical. Probability of hostility unknown." Eli exhaled sharply. "Great. Let's just hope it's a vegetarian." Carrie's laugh was brittle, an edge of fear cracking through. "Yeah, well, if it steps this way, we're not even appetizers." The characters take shape. Eli crouched to inspect the emergency beacon salvage from the wreckage. His hands worked quickly, methodically, connecting wires and aligning components with a practiced ease born of years spent in the void. "We need this thing up and running. Rescue won't find us if they don't know where to look." Carrie leaned over his shoulder, her sharp eyes darting between his hands and the distant colossus. She was shorter than Eli, but her presence loomed larger, her curiosity always bordering on recklessness. "We're not getting out of here without knowing what we're dealing with. That thing could flatten us, Eli. Or maybe it knows something about this planet we don't." Eli shot her a look. "We don't need to know anything except how to stay alive. Stick to the plan. Shelter, beacon, rescue." Dante's voice chimed in again, unbothered by the tension. "Survival odds decrease by 14% if additional time is spent near the anomaly. Suggest following protocol. Avoid unnecessary risks." "Listen to the AI, Carrie," Eli said, his voice edged with irritation. Carrie crossed her arms, her gaze lingering on the distant silhouette. "Playing it safe didn't save anyone last time, did it?" Eli stiffened, his hands freezing mid-motion. The weight of her words hung in the air, heavier than the planet's gravity. The conflict emerges. A deep rumble echoed across the plains, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Both humans instinctively braced themselves as a ridge of rock collapsed in the distance, sending up a plume of dust and debris. "Seismic activity detected," Dante announced. "Magnitude 5.2. Probability of recurrence high." Eli's jaw tightened. "We need to move. Now." Carrie didn't argue. Together, they gathered what little they had managed to salvage from the wreck: ration packs, water filters, and a pair of grappling hooks that might hold against the planet's erratic gravity. The ridge ahead loomed like a jagged wound in the earth, its edges crumbling under the shifting pull of gravity. Beyond it, the ground stretched out into a flat, barren expanse littered with crystalline structures that shimmered in the dying sunlight. "Shelter's got to be on the other side," Eli said, slinging his pack over one shoulder. "You mean we have to climb that?" Carrie gestured to the unstable cliff face with an incredulous look. "Unless you've got wings I don't know about, yeah." The ascent. The climb was grueling. Each foothold threatened to give way, and the oppressive atmosphere turned every motion into a laborious effort. The ridge seemed to stretch endlessly, the top always just out of reach. "Gravity just spiked by 18%, Dante reported. Advise pausing to adjust." Eli grunted, his muscles burning with the effort. "Yeah, I'll pause when I'm dead." Carrie, climbing a few meters above him, shot a wry smile over her shoulder. "You're not allowed to die, Crane. Not before you admit I'm right about the anomaly." The ridge beneath her hand cracked ominously, and before Eli could react, the rock gave way. Carrie's scream tore through the air as she plummeted. Eli lunged, his gloved hand snapping out to grab the fraying edge of her harness rope. The weight nearly yanked him off the cliff, but he gritted his teeth and held firm, his arms straining against the pole. "Don't let go," she shouted, panic thick in her voice. "Wasn't planning on it," he growled, bracing himself against a jagged outcropping. The cliffhanger. After what felt like an eternity, Eli managed to haul Carrie back onto the ledge. Both of them collapsed, gasping for breath. "Remind me," Eli said between gulps of air, "why I keep dragging you out of trouble." Carrie smirked, brushing crimson dust from her suit. "Because deep down, you know I'm the only one who can get us off this rock." Eli didn't respond. His gaze drifted to the horizon, where the towering figure continued its slow, deliberate march. Each step sent shockwaves rippling through the earth, and a strange, low hum filled the air, a sound that wasn't entirely natural. "We need answers," Carrie said quietly. Eli tightened his grip on the beacon. "We need to survive." Above them, the sky darkened, and the first streaks of alien lightning danced across the clouds. Chapter 2: The Divide. Eli had always hated the silence of the unknown. It pressed down on him like a physical weight, suffocating, unyielding. Every step he took on the crumbling ridge felt like it could be his last, and the thrum of distant seismic tremors vibrating through the earth didn't help. Carrie was quiet too, her breathing heavy as they ascended the last stretch of rock, but her eyes were always scanning, calculating, processing. A part of Eli envied her relentless curiosity, even if it sometimes led her into danger. "I don't like this," he muttered, surveying the uneven expanse ahead of them. The alien structure, a mix of metallic spires and organic-looking protrusions, loomed against the setting sun like a twisted monument to forgotten horrors. "We need answers." Carrie's voice was steady, but Eli could hear the hesitation in it. She was as rattled as he was, but she would never admit it. The ruin had a malevolent feel to it, its enormous bones piercing the sky like a forgotten giant. Her eyes flitted over the shimmering glyphs that adorned its surface, trying to decode their meaning. "This isn't just a building, Eli. It's alive." Eli shook his head, fingers tightening around the strap of his pack. "If it's alive, I'm pretty sure it's trying to kill us." His hand brushed against the nearest wall, sending a sharp vibration up his arm. The sensation was unsettling, like the structure itself had sensed his touch. The air around them grew thick with an electric charge, and Eli felt a sudden prickle on the back of his neck. He gritted his teeth. "We don't know anything about this place, Carrie. It's not worth risking everything for." The ground beneath them rumbled again, this time a violent, insistent shake that nearly sent them toppling off the ridge. Eli barely caught himself against the wall of the structure as a massive chunk of rock plunged into the gorge below. "Get a move on," he barked, his heart racing. "That thing's about to fall apart." Carrie didn't hesitate. She pushed forward, her boots clicking against the stone. "This structure is ancient, Eli. It's been here for who knows how long, but it's still standing. That means it's important. Or it's a trap," Eli countered. He hated how close she was to this thing, her proximity to something so incomprehensibly alien. But she was already at the base of a massive archway, her gloved hand tracing the intricate designs carved into the stone. She turned, eyes alight with excitement. "Eli, look at this. These markings, they're like nothing I've ever seen before. If we could just get inside, we could figure out." The ground trembled again, harder this time. A low, mechanical hum vibrated through the air. Something within the structure shifted, and a panel in the archway opened with a sharp hiss, revealing a dark, narrow passage. "Did you do that?" Eli asked, his voice tight. Carrie shook her head, her eyes wide. "No, that wasn't me. But we're in now. We have to go." Eli hesitated. Every instinct in him screamed to turn away, to find shelter, to escape this planet before it swallowed them whole. But the truth was, he wasn't sure he could leave Carrie behind. She was determined, obsessively so. He let out a sharp exhale, muttering a curse under his breath. Fine, but I'm taking point. Entering the structure. The interior of the structure was even more alien than its exterior. They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the metallic corridors. The walls were sleek and black, but they pulsed faintly with an eerie blue light. An almost imperceptible hum reverberated through the air, vibrating against Eli's ribcage, unsettling his sense of reality. "Dante, can you get a read on this?" Eli asked, his voice low as they ventured deeper. "Affirmative. Energy signature detected. Source unknown." The AI's neutral tone did little to calm the growing knot in Eli's stomach. "Suggest extreme caution." As they ventured further into the labyrinth, the passage grew narrower, and the walls seemed to close in around them. Eli couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. No, not watched. He felt as though the structure itself had sensed their presence and was now responding to it, almost testing them. Carrie's voice broke through his thoughts. "Eli, look at this." She was kneeling in front of a massive, cylindrical object embedded into the wall. It was made of a shimmering material unlike anything they'd ever seen before, and its surface seemed to ripple as she reached out to touch it. "Carrie, don't." But it was too late. The moment her fingers made contact with the object, the walls of the passage shuddered violently, and the entire room seemed to come alive. A blinding light flooded the chamber, and the floor trembled as the structure seemed to awaken, its movements slow but deliberate. Rising tension. "Carrie!" Eli grabbed her arm, pulling her back. The light was blinding now, and a deep, resonant hum thrummed through the air, vibrating their very bones. The structure was reacting to her touch, no more than that. It was alive, as she had said. The walls groaned, and the floor beneath them shifted. A deafening roar echoed through the corridors, a sound that was neither mechanical nor biological, but something in between. Eli's breath caught in his throat. This isn't just a building, it's a weapon. The floor trembled beneath their feet again, this time with an intensity that felt like it might break open the planet itself. "We need to get out of here. Now!" Eli grabbed Carrie by the arm, pulling her toward the passage they had come through. But it was too late. The opening they had entered through had vanished. The walls had sealed shut, and they were trapped, caught in the heart of a structure that had awakened with deadly intent. Carrie's voice was barely a whisper. "We're not getting out of this, are we?" Eli turned to face her, his heart pounding in his chest. There was no easy answer to that. Instead, he gripped his pack and took a deep breath. "Not if I have anything to say about it." The battle for survival had just begun. Chapter 3: A Test of Will. The passage was narrow, claustrophobic even, and Eli's every step seemed to echo back at him, intensifying the silence that hung heavy in the air. He felt it pressing against him, suffocating him. The hum of the structure, that constant low vibration that had been there since they entered, was now sharper, more pronounced, as though the very walls were alive, sensing their presence, watching their every move. Carrie's breath was shallow, her eyes darting over the strange symbols etched into the walls, but she said nothing. The excitement she had felt earlier had morphed into a tense quiet. They both knew the danger now, even if they hadn't fully understood it when they stepped into the ruin. "Is it just me, or does it feel like we're walking into a trap?" Eli muttered, his fingers brushing the edge of a sharp metal protrusion jutting from the wall. Carrie's lips pressed into a thin line, her gaze flicking to the darkened corridors ahead. "I don't know. It feels alive." She hesitated, glancing back toward him. "Do you think it's watching us?" Eli didn't answer immediately, but the question hung in the air between them like a warning. He wasn't sure what to think anymore. It wasn't just the structure's eerie stillness that unnerved him. It was the feeling of something just beyond their comprehension, waiting for the right moment to strike. They had triggered something. He could feel it in his bones. He reached out, tapping his wrist communicator. "Dante, any updates on our location?" "Negative." The AI's voice crackled through the small speaker. "Energy signatures are fluctuating. Unknown source. Recommend immediate exit strategy." Eli's eyes narrowed. "Can't do that just yet. We're not leaving until we know what's going on here." The lights above flickered ominously, casting erratic shadows over the walls. The atmosphere was thick with an energy that crackled through the air, making his skin tingle. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse in rhythm with the vibrations of the structure, as if the building itself was alive, breathing, shifting beneath their weight. He turned to Carrie. "We're getting close, aren't we?" "Yeah," she murmured, her voice almost lost in the cavernous space. "Closer than I'd like." Without warning, the floor beneath them shifted. Eli's foot slipped as the platform tilted sharply to one side, and the next thing he knew, the ground gave way entirely. "Watch out!" Carrie shouted, but it was too late. The world plunged into chaos as the floor cracked open, sending them both tumbling into the abyss below. The drop seemed endless, the walls blurring past them in a dizzying spiral. Eli fought to steady himself, reaching out to grab onto anything solid, but the air around him was a whirlwind, and the darkness below swallowed him whole. Then as quickly as it started, the fall ended. Eli slammed into a soft, yielding surface. Pain exploded through his body, and he gritted his teeth, but the impact hadn't been fatal. The ground beneath him was spongy like something organic. His vision swam as he tried to make sense of what had happened. Carrie's voice came through the haze. "Eli? Eli, are you okay?" "I'm alive," he rasped, pushing himself up. His body screamed in protest, but he ignored it. "Where are we?" Carrie was already on her feet, her hand extending to help him up. "I don't know, but we've got bigger problems." He glanced around, blinking as his eyes adjusted to the dim light. They were in a vast, cavernous space that stretched out before them, its ceiling lost in shadows. It was hard to make out, but the walls of the cavern seemed to be made of the same shifting organic material as the rest of the structure. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of something unfamiliar, a blend of metals and earth. A low hum pulsed through the air, now louder than before. "What's that sound?" Eli asked, his pulse quickening. "It's coming from deeper in," Carrie said, eyes narrowing. "We have to go, Eli. Whatever it is, it's not friendly." They didn't need to say more. Without another word, they began to move, carefully picking their way through the cavern. Their footsteps were muffled by the spongy surface beneath them, but the hum grew louder as they drew closer to its source. The air around them thickened, the vibrations becoming almost painful to endure. Eli could feel the structure itself, like an entity, resonating with an energy far beyond anything he'd experienced before. The closer they got to the center of the cavern, the more the sound seemed to intensify, growing in both pitch and volume. Then, through the darkness ahead, a faint glow appeared. It flickered like a dying fire, casting jagged shadows across the walls. As they drew closer, the source became clearer. A massive orb, at least twice the size of a human, hovered in midair, suspended by an intricate lattice of glowing tendrils. It pulsed with a strange, sickly light, and Eli could feel its energy seeping into his bones. The air was thick with it. He could taste the metallic tang of it on his tongue. It was alien, unknowable. Carrie stepped forward, her eyes wide. "What is that?" "I don't know," Eli whispered, his heart hammering in his chest. "But I don't like it." The moment he spoke, the orb flickered violently, sending a shockwave of energy rippling outward. Eli instinctively threw his arms up to shield himself, but the force of it was too great. The ground beneath him shook, and his vision blurred as he was knocked off his feet. When his senses finally cleared, he saw Carrie standing a few meters away, her body rigid with shock. The orb was still glowing, but now it was pulsing erratically, as though it was reacting to them, testing them. And then, through the chaos, the voice came. "You're not welcome here." Eli's blood ran cold. The structure had spoken. Chapter 4: The Awakening. The voice reverberated through the air like an ancient storm, shaking the very foundations of the cavern. Eli froze, his heart hammering in his chest as the words echoed, chilling him to his core. "You are not welcome here." Carrie, standing just a few feet away, looked around wildly, as though searching for the source of the voice. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice taut with fear. Her hand reached instinctively for the weapon at her side, her fingers trembling. Eli didn't respond right away. He wasn't sure he could. He could feel the weight of the words pressing against him, a presence so palpable it almost suffocated him. The orb, glowing erratically now, flickering in the darkness, seemed to pulse in response, its tendrils writhing, as though alive like a living creature testing them. He took a slow breath, forcing himself to steady his thoughts. "Yeah," he said, his voice low, measured. "I heard it." The cavern around them seemed to narrow, the strange energy filling the space, thick and oppressive. Every corner of the room was suffused with the hum that had grown sharper, almost frantic. The structure wasn't just alive, it was sentient. Carrie stepped forward, narrowing her eyes. "We can't stay here. We need to get out." Eli's gaze fixed on the orb, a silent battle raging within him. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to retreat from this unknown terror that had awakened. But another part of him, the part that had always pushed him forward, always sought answers, urged him to stay, to confront whatever this was. "Do you think it's alive?" Carrie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eli didn't answer at first. He couldn't. The pulsating light from the orb was almost hypnotic, and with every flicker, the energy in the air seemed to grow more tangible. It pressed against his skin, a suffocating force that made his breath feel shallow. He was certain that the orb was watching them, studying them like prey, waiting for the right moment to strike. "It's not just alive," Eli muttered, his voice barely audible. "It's conscious." Carrie's eyes widened in realization. "Conscious? You think it's aware?" Before Eli could respond, a tremor shook the ground beneath them. The orb surged with light, its tendrils reaching out as if searching for something, or someone. The energy in the room coiled, growing tighter, more intense. The air was thick with the weight of it, pressing in on them like a living thing. Eli felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end, his instincts screaming that time was running out. "We need to make a decision. Now." Carrie didn't hesitate. Her hand shot up, fingers splayed wide as she gestured for him to follow. "Move!" They darted forward, scrambling to put distance between themselves and the orb. But the cavern was endless, the walls stretching out impossibly far in every direction. The light from the orb had intensified, casting sharp shadows that seemed to shift and move on their own. The tendrils now extended outward like fingers, curling through the air as if reaching for them. And nose were trying to escape. "Keep moving," Eli shouted, his voice cutting through the eerie silence. Carrie didn't need another command. She kept pace with him, both of them racing toward a set of massive double doors at the far end of the cavern. They had no idea what lay beyond them, but it was the only way out. The walls seemed to close in around them as the ground rumbled beneath their feet, the energy growing more intense with every passing second. Eli's breath came in ragged bursts as they approached the doors. He reached out for the handle, his hand shaking as he gripped it. Just as he pushed, the ground beneath them gave way again. This time, there was no warning. The floor cracked open, sending them both tumbling into the darkness. The fall was brief but disorienting. Eli hit the ground with a sickening thud, the air knocked from his lungs. He struggled to get up, but the force of the fall had left him winded. He could hear Carrie coughing nearby, but she was already on her feet, scanning the new area they had fallen into. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice strained but urgent. "I'm fine," Eli gasped, pushing himself upright. But we're not alone. The cavern they had fallen into was darker, the walls even more oppressive. But there was something else here, a presence. It was not the orb, but something else, something older, deeper. He could feel it in his bones, a shiver crawling down his spine. The air was thick with something ancient, something that had been lying dormant for a long time. Carrie's hand reached for the weapon at her side once more. Her grip tightened. "What is that feeling?" "I don't know," Eli muttered, narrowing his eyes into the darkness. "But I think we've awakened something." Before he could say more, a shadow moved, barely perceptible in the dim light. But it was there, something watching, waiting. Then it moved again, closer this time. It was not a person, not a creature, but something otherworldly. Carrie stepped forward, her weapon raised. "Stay close. We don't know what we're dealing with." The shadow flitted once more, too quick for Eli to track. But he could feel its presence drawing closer. And with it, the weight of their situation sank in deeper. Whatever had been hidden in this place was stirring, and it was not happy to be disturbed. They had woken something ancient, and it was hunting them. The tension in the air snapped as the shadow lunged forward. Eli and Carrie barely had time to react. And then everything went dark.